Hey, this is Stephen Platinum, your friend in wrestling with Platinum versus AEW Dynamite. This is from April 21st, 2021. I just got done watching the show. And again, they're showing a very smart kind of build slowly attitude now that they're not directly neck and neck with NXT. Last week, they had a huge viewership. And again, they do themselves so much favors by setting up the next week's show. This was definitely all hands on deck. They definitely used their entire roster. Everybody was involved in a promo segment or a match, but they didn't overexert themselves. It didn't feel like it was a very well laid out show. In many ways, there are a couple things I would definitely quibble with, and I shall. But overall, this is a show that's showing it's operating out of strength again instead of out of weakness and desperation. They've got a couple of big things on the horizon. Of course, they've got the Blood and Guts match, the de facto War Games, that we're going to find out the exact rules next week. They're actually going to have a whole segment devoted to that, which I think is very interesting, and I think it's very cool. And that's going to take place on May 7th on a Dynamite, of all things. And then their pay-per-view is May 30th. I am for show going to be there on May 30th. Anyway, we open the show and we lay out. First of all, after the movie was done, the movie, which was a nice lead-in, which was the Kong Skull Island movie, we promoted 3 of the matches that we were going to have. Then we had our open, and then we laid out the entire show. And then we went into our first match, which was Ricky Starks against Adam Page. Ricky Starks took a scary bump where he hit the back of his head when he was supposed to land on his feet and played that off. And then a really wonky thing happened to his legs, which they turned into an injury, quote unquote, for wrestling purposes. But clearly at one point he had tweaked his legs and scared himself. It would not surprise me to hear that he just gutted out the rest of the match and he really did get hurt. It was a really gutsy performance by Ricky Starks, a really solid performance by Adam Page. And the finish of rolling into that bulldog choke with the hooking the ankle at the same time, I thought was very innovative and worked in the context of what had happened in the match, and I really liked it. Team Taz attacks, and the Dark Order helps. So we're continuing all of the things that make sense in the relationships that we have set up. Though, AEW does suffer from one thing. It is repeating a trope. And in this show, that trope was somebody attacks you and then somebody defends you. And they did it on 3 to 4 occasions. You could argue 4, but they did it 3 times. Inevitably, when you have this many factions and this many people who are allied with this many people, that's going to happen. But it does have diminishing returns. That is my concern. We go to commercial, and when we come back, we show the Elite getting in their own bus/trailer. So that's going to set up something for later on. So again, we're getting to see all the major players, though not all of the major players are being wedged into matches. And that's just fine when you have a payroll and a roster as big as AEW's. If they ain't afraid of spending that money to have people doing these sort of segments that have nothing to do with a bell-to-bell wrestling match at that moment, I'm all for it. I think it makes them look big time. Mr. Big Time. Match number 2, Penta with Alex, who, again, Alex is enjoying this role so much. I love the thing where they're having a promo as they're doing entrances as well. They did it on more than one occasion. It's something they're experimenting with, and I think it definitely worked tonight. Trent with a question mark with Orange Cassidy. I'm not sure what that question mark thing was about. I'm sure somebody will let me know, or they will reveal it later. During the split screen with the commercial, one of the commercials was for the Kenny Omega Rich Swann title versus title match happening on Impact this Sunday, which I thought was really cool. They come back, Alex interrupting Penta, right? Interrupting Penta was on his way to lose, and he interrupts to talk on the microphone to buy time. Meanwhile, Penta hits Orange when he gets into the ring to confront Alex. Alex hits Trent with the microphone, which sets up a package pile driver, and Penta gets the win. So an interesting way to use Alex. Different. They give Penta the win, which is a bit of a surprise, but I think a good one, especially when you know that Penta's going to move on to a match with Orange Cassidy next week. Great. So we're having things that string together and go from week to week, which is never a bad thing. JR is talking with the Pinnacle. This is a pre-tape segment. Pinnacle, especially MJF, incredibly brutal promo. Wardlow, though, giving a chance to speak, and I thought acquitted himself very nicely. Then we get come back from commercial, and we get a nice video package. Again, all these video packages, they've set up all of these things with the countdown to Dynamite, which not that many people watch, but I think reusing the footage on Dynamite itself is a great move, and it's a great little package with Tay Conti and Shida to set up this match. This match, they were definitely going for it, and there was some big bumps. At times, Tay Conti seemed very frantic to me. A couple of people texted me and commented that as well. Sort of a frantic energy that I think worked against the match at times, but they're definitely working hard and looking to prove themselves. And at the end of the day, Hikaru Shida lands a spinning knee thing to the head that just looked great. The strikes in particular looked very solid, and the big bumps were something else. I'll say that. At the end of this, Britt Baker comes out and shows that since Tay Conti has lost, she'll obviously drop down in the rankings from number 1, and Britt Baker will take that spot. All for it. Miro does a small promo of basically which champ am I going to go after now. And apparently Kip Sabian is just out of the picture right now. Tony Schiavone is in the ring with the Inner Circle. Jericho is full babyface now, and basically the long and short of it is they are setting up a parlay with the Pinnacle for next week, where they're going to go over what's the rules of Blood and Guts going to be. A great way to promote, great way to have everybody involved, etc., etc. See, nobody needs to be built up on either team because it's all about the team versus team thing. So it makes sense that they're not doing little matches here and there on Dynamite. Go to commercial and we come back. Billy Gunn versus QT. I thought Billy Gunn did a really great job of not only acquitting himself in a match, but showing that this thing with QT's group, the Factory, is very serious as far as he's concerned. As Billy's coming to the ring, we have an Anthony Ogogo promo, which I think is pretty cool, with QT chiming in as well. Billy coming out right away and hitting the two people with QT was, I thought, a really kind of cool thing. Austin and Colton are not out there with him, but they come out later once Koromoto gets involved, which I think is, again, a really kind of cool thing, shows the volatility of the feud. Ogogo, though, comes out, hits that stomach punch on Billy Gunn, which sets up the cutter, and QT gets the win. QT then brings in an obvious wooden gimmick chair. This is like a quibbling thing, but bringing in an implement that's never used for a blatant spot, I think, is really stupid. I'll just say that. I just think it looks ridiculous. Did I think the spot of breaking the wooden chair over Koromoto was really cool? Yes, I do. And I got what they were going for. They're going for a Big Bubba Rogers thing. Okay. But again, to bring in an obvious prop, you're popping the bubble of me being into the thing, and you're taking me out of the thing, and they have to avoid doing that on AEW as much as they can. Commercial break. We come back. AEW being part of, in fact, introducing the TNT ad, I think, is a very powerful and effective statement about the relationship between AEW and the network itself. We come back, and the Elite is trying to cut a promo, and Kenny Omega is kind of slipping into his typical promo. The horn keeps honking. You know what this is going to be. It's Moxley outside with in a truck with Eddie Kingston. They slam into the trailer. They got a pipe. They're breaking windows. They're going to bust in, but the Elite are not there. So we get a little bit of a buddy cop comedy between Eddie Kingston and Jon Moxley. And again, we're seeing all of these people. We're seeing them in a context that makes sense, but we're not necessarily just seeing them in a match for match's sake. Again, AEW is learning to not waste their punches, and introduce, which to them is probably a brand new audience of hundreds of thousands of people, to who are all the players involved. Match number 5, Powerhouse Hobbs against Christian Cage. This is a Christian Cage that I like to see as he's coming to the ring. He's got a lot of energy. He's running his mouth. This is obviously a thing of significance for him. He's not just playing it stoic. Stoic Christian is no fun at all. Christian Cage running his mouth and having good matches, that's who we want to see, and that's who we get. We get to a commercial break, split screen, and then at the end, Powerhouse Hobbs gets him in a position where he could possibly win, but he's being pretty cocky about it, saluting or doing the vision thing with his hand, a la Christian Cage, who slips behind him and hits the kill switch. Gets that win, and then gets the hell out of Dodge. Though Ricky Starks comes to check on Hobbs and gives Christian Cage the dagger stare. We got next week's show promoted, and then we get a promo by Jade Cargill talking about all these managers want her, and we hear from Hardy, and we hear from Vicky Guerrero. But Jade Cargill says, I don't need a manager, but someone's going to have to make me a hell of an offer, which certainly seems like an open-ended thing to moi. And then finally, we get Jungle Boy against Darby Allin. A very good match, a very good exhibition for both. Luchasaurus at one point helps Jungle Boy back into the ring, and that's enough to get Sting involved. So Sting takes umbrage with that. Luchasaurus and Sting brawl to the back. Darby Allin endures all kinds of abuse, and then finally gets the pin with his Last Supper move, which I thought was a great finish. Then Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page attacks. I was going to say, they were the last two major players that it seems like we didn't see, and now we've seen them. They attack. Lance Archer attacks them, and then Sting comes to help Lance Archer once Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page get the advantage on Lance Archer, which I really like, that they didn't just scatter, but they hit him low, and then they were beating him down, and then Sting comes to the ring. What does that mean as far as the relationship betwixt Lance Archer and Sting, Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page, and we move on and on. So, a Dynamite that operated out of strength. Again, there's some tropes that they're kind of leaning on too heavily, but I like that they're managing to balance this incredibly large roster by not just having a bunch of throwaway 4-on-4 matches. They're making everything count, and they're making the promo segments matter, and I'm all about it. Though I gotta say, the card for next week, which they certainly announced most of the matches for, it's not an incredibly strong card. So Dynamite's gonna have to give us something at some point. But then again, the week after next week's show, that's when you're gonna have blood and guts. And I'm sure that's what they're relying on as well. They should. This has been Stephen Platinum, your friend in wrestling.